It is a great state, isn't it? All due respect to the Ohioans here. Thank you all so much for coming and testifying today. This is such an important issue, as we see by the crowds gathered here. And I know this to be such an important issue. I'm the daughter of a sports reporter, was a student athlete myself, never in a position for any of what we're talking about here today to be relevant. But the challenges of balancing the demands of school, of young adulthood, and the demands of the physical aspects of athleticism are so challenging and come together around this important issue. Ms. Salamone, my first question is for you. It was incredibly gripping to hear from your testimony how prevalent psychological abuse is for female athletes and the detrimental effects it can have on mental health. Continuing on some of my colleagues' questions about putting the health and safety of student athletes front and center, I want to talk about the mental health aspects. Can you talk more about what systemic changes might need to be made for student athletes to have the mental health support and resources that they need, both in general, but particularly at this changing time? We know that social media plays a huge role in mental health components for young people today. And also, more broadly, what enforcement mechanisms need to be in place so that this toxicity can be reported and tracked and monitored?
I mean, I'll start with the enforcement. I think, again, it's independent oversight. Schools, there are very good people that work at schools that very much care about the athletes. But when it comes to stepping up for an athlete, if it puts the school at risk of being exposed for some scandal, they have to put the school first. And especially depending on who's involved, that can be an issue. So independent oversight as a starter. I think in terms of addressing mental health, there are so many different components. Number one, there's tremendous pressure to be an athlete alone. You add on top of that social media in general, which came before NIL, and that already created a different world. And I think that there needs to be, these are young, impressionable individuals that are learning who they are and learning how they exist in the world and trying to figure out what they're going to do with their lives. And all of that feels enormous at that age. And so I think they need, in addition to mental health resources that are independent and that are not reporting to coaches what is being talked about, they need people that actually understand what it's like to be an athlete at that level. They need people who they can talk to and have some kind of validation and perspective given to some of the issues to kind of counsel through on a one-on-one basis more. I think that there have been a lot of efforts put in around mental health, and athletes are talking about it more than ever. But I think it still is a little bit of a stigma where you can identify it in other people, but not so much see it in yourself. I think when you have injured athletes, that needs to be a top priority. Injured athletes face a hurdle in many respects and can start to feel very isolated from their teams, whether because their coach kind of starts to push them out and deems them less important and tries to get them to leave, which happens, or if it's just they feel removed, they feel like they're trying to put on an act, and it takes a lot of effort to keep that brave face up and try to be a good and positive teammate while you're dealing with something like that. Mm-hmm. So it's so many pressures that they genuinely need people that they can talk to that get it.
Thank you so much. That was very powerful. Mr. Donati, since 2021, when INL became permissible, have you seen name, image, likeness compensation alleviate some of the broader stressors student athletes have had to navigate, such as low graduation rates and poor mental health?
Have I seen NIL alleviate some of the burdens student athletes carry with them? I mentioned in my opening testimony that one of the things I think that we're not talking about is a lot of our student athletes, come from underprivileged homes. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times there's pressure on them to support those families once they get to school. So these resources now, a in a lot of cases are going directly home to mom, to dad, to brother, sister, to extended family. So that to me has been a real win, and something that I've seen. We're talking about mental health. The pressure of that is so real for so many of these young men and women. To be able to help them at home has been. I've seen that burden alleviated in real time. So I think that's been a real win.
Yeah. Thank you. Yield back.